it makes sense when you get it explained to you. This is what's going on. Here's how we're going to go through this, and then get your system functioning better. That way, when you get on the bike and take it for a ride, you're like, this is what I expect. This is how it should work. You feel better because you're functioning better, because your body's working the way that it naturally should. Now, our goal is not to just put you on a bunch of supplements long term. We want to restore the function overall. What does that mean? We look at lifestyle, we look at exercise, nutrition, and we look at, again, restoring function using certain tools. And sometimes those tools do include supplement recommendations, right? It just depends on each person. No plan looks exactly the same because no Dutch test looks exactly the same, right? No lifestyle is exactly the same. So what we recommend for you is really customized for you. Hey there, welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast, where we discuss women's health, hormones, and everything else in between. Join me as we dive into the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. If you are like so many other people and you've gone in, gotten a blood test, told that everything is normal, yet you still feel like garbage. You still feel like something's wrong, something's off. Something is not the way that it used to be for your system, for your body. And you're like, well, now what do I do? Now where do I turn? They didn't give me any directions. They didn't tell me to do anything different. What do I do? Dutch test. Do a urine test. Urine tests show you so much more than a blood test. It's also really important that anytime you are looking at labs, that you are considering who the provider is, who the practitioner is, or whoever you're working with and chatting with, and what their range of normal is. What do they mean by that? What normal numbers are important to them and why? Very often, blood work normals are determined by a lab, and they take an average of the people in the region. What do those numbers stand for? So, for example, say you get a blood test for something and they have a low end and they have a high end, right? Like, let's just say a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. There's a low and a high for it. Is that normal or not? What are they looking for? They're looking for, are you within that or not? But what if you're technically within the normal range, but it's really low? But it's still within the normal. It still fits the parameters, right? It's still technically within the normal range. Or I'm just outside of it. But it's still pretty close. So many people will say, oh, that could be a fluke. That's just fine. What they are looking for oftentimes, if you are not working with a functional practitioner, and as a functional practitioner myself, I look at labs very, very differently than most other people, right? Because I am not an emergency services person. I'm looking at overall function. So the way I look at labs is very different. Normal end of range, yours is on the low end. That to me is low. I have a functional range for blood labs. And then, of course, doing a urine test gives us so much more information because we're seeing, free versus bound hormone and everything else, as well as nutrient metabolites, cortisol levels, all that stuff in one test. That's why I love Dutch tests so much. In fact, if you were to try and get and order all the labs separately that you would see on this one Dutch test, you'd spend over $1,200. It might even be more now as I'm saying this, because I did that value. I added those things up. That was several years ago. So now that number might potentially be a lot higher because of the cost of inflation and things like that. But the cost of Dutch test has not changed in a long time. So it's literally for a fraction of the cost. You can get a Dutch test that shows you all these values that you would have to pay so much for, like 3 times the amount for, to get it separately. You can get it all in one test. Isn't that amazing? So why is that important? Because again, we're not just looking at normal, we're looking at functional. It's a smaller range. What are people looking at then when they look at normal ranges? They're looking for something that is way off to say that there's something catastrophic and dangerous going on in your system, right? Like, for example, I've talked about this before on here, but when my husband had rhabdomyolysis, he was very, very sick, very, very ill. His inflammatory markers were off the charts. And when I say off the charts, like their highest measurement was like 2000 and 200, and his was above that. So they couldn't even categorize how high it was, right? They did blood tests. I had urine tests run on him as well, the protein in his urine, the breakdown of everything, right? All of these things that were very, very off. He was very, very sick. Now, when we look at functional tests, here's the difference. And this isn't the case for everybody. And sort of just kind of think of this differently. Like somebody who is really sick or has something really bad going on like that. But what if your levels are just within a normal range? So it's not really, really bad. Like maybe not everything's on fire and breaking down, but it's not working really, really well, right? Like maybe you're just a little sick, but for a long period of time, or maybe your body has acclimated to that and you've just literally like white knuckled it through life so that you're still functioning. There are so many women that I talk to on a weekly basis where they're like, yeah, I had a cyst burst and I kept going with my day, or I had this and this, or they'll say, I actually had my appendix burst, but because I've had a cyst that was more painful, I didn't do anything about it right away. What? Okay. Right. So I'll use the example of a bicycle, right? If you're getting labs and something is really off, right? It's like going out to, oh, I'm going to go for a bike ride. You go out to your bike and it's missing a wheel. The front wheel gone. That's a big problem, right? You can't go for a bike ride until you get that wheel on the bike, right? That was my husband with the rhabdomyolysis, something big, huge fire, needs to be put out immediately, needs to be immediately corrected, that type of a thing, right? But what if you go out to your bike and your tires are a little bit flat, right? There's some air in them. There's some air, but they're not great. And the brakes, one of the brakes, like there's front and rear brakes on your bike. The rear brakes, they're kind of rusted on a little bit, right? Oh, okay. And then the chain on the bike has a bunch of mud on it. So it's grinding and it's not running very smoothly. Now, can you get on that bike and go for a bike ride? Yes. Yes, you can, right? Is it going to be great? No, it's not. It's not. The gears in there, they're going to be grinding and that's going to be hard. The rear brake that's kind of pinching on the tire is going to make it harder. You're going to put in so much more effort and go way slower. And then the tires being a little bit flat. Oh, there's some air in them. Okay. But it's going to be a really rough, bumpy ride. And again, not having enough air in the tires means you have to put out so much more effort to make it down the road. But technically, you could get on that bike and take it for a ride. You could get on the bike and you can make it down the road. But it is a terrible ride. And do you want to do that? And if you were to go outside in your driveway every morning and see the bike that has, not, sort of flat tires and the gears are all gummed up. And yet you have another bike that is full air in the tires. The gears are clean. The brakes work perfect, all that stuff. Which bike are you going to get on and take for a ride? Obviously, the one that's working perfectly, the one that's functioning the way that it should. You can get on that bike, use the right amount of effort, and get the right amount of distance from it. That is what functional testing does. That is what looking at your body in this angle is. It's not like you go out and there's no tire on the bike, right? No, there's all these little things going on in the different areas of the bike's function that impact how well it actually works. That's why we do Dutch testing. And that's why it's so different than doing just a regular blood lab and looking at these huge, like you could drive a truck through these ranges on a blood lab, right? And seeing this is how we're looking at and working with a functional practitioner that's actually going to look at how your system is being utilized optimally or not, right? Is it optimal or not? Are these the right ranges for you or not, right? Just because it's just within range doesn't mean it's a good level for you. Very simple when you break it down like that. So these are the things that we look at. And again, this is why I love a Dutch test so dang much. This is why I think it's so valuable to dive into this versus a blood lab. Now, does Dutch show us everything? No. And I know I've mentioned thyroid, so I do want to say that Dutch does not look at a thyroid level, right? Sometimes they'll say, hey, based on some of your cortisol values here, you should get a full thyroid panel, TSH, T3, T4, antibodies, et cetera, right? More than just one thyroid number. But these are all things that we talk about. We will see your estrogens, progesterone, androgens, including testosterone, adrenal markers, cortisols, nutrient levels, B12, B6, glutathione, biotin. There's a gut marker. We'll see your dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, melatonin, and neuroinflammation and oxidative stress markers, right? I'm just rattling off some of the things that we see. But again, like I said, if you were to get these things separately, it would be almost 3 times as much as getting it all in this one test. That is why I love this test so much. That is why it's so valuable. And the amount of information, it's a massive amount of information to go through, but we spend the time going through it with you in detail. We deep dive into it, right? I am going to deep dive into these labs and say, hey, we're going to spend an hour talking about this, not just 5 minutes or 15 minutes. We're going to make sure that we identify everything and then give you the right next steps moving forward so that you have the right guidance to really work on this. Again, using the example of the bicycle, where it's a full diagnostic, the blueprint for what's going on with the bicycle, because there might be a problem with the bicycle that you didn't even realize was an issue, right? Maybe the tires were crooked as well. Maybe there was something wrong with the spokes that you didn't even notice or see because the tires are kind of flat. We see that all the time on a Dutch test. So once you get the full diagnostics, then we actually walk you through step by step. Here's how you fix the bike. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to pump up those tires. We're going to clean the chain and the gears and everything else. And here, we're going to put a guard on it to keep it clean if you ride through mud. Oh, here's how you fix the brakes. These spokes that are off, they actually need to be replaced. Here's how we're going to replace the spokes. We tell you what's going on. We tell you how to go through it. And we tell you the order that it's the most helpful, right? Because if you are riding on flat tires, if you don't put the air in the tires first before you fix the spoke, right, you could still have issues with the tire, right? Oh, the spokes are ruined because the tires were kind of flat. So then why would you fix the spoke before fixing the tire? Because if you fix the spoke and you have to ride the bike again, it's going to ruin the spokes more. So we start with, okay, let's reinflate the tires and make sure they stay inflated. Okay, now let's fix the spokes next, right? It makes sense when you get it explained to you. This is what's going on. Here's how we're going to go through this and then get your system functioning better. That way, when you get on the bike and take it for a ride, you're like, this is what I expect. This is how it should work. You feel better because you're functioning better, because your body's working the way that it naturally should. Now, our goal is not to just put you on a bunch of supplements long term. We want to restore the function overall. What does that mean? We look at lifestyle, we look at exercise, nutrition, and we look at, again, restoring function using certain tools. And sometimes those tools do include supplement recommendations, right? It just depends on each person. No plan looks exactly the same because no Dutch test looks exactly the same, right? No lifestyle is exactly the same. So what we recommend for you is really customized for you. So that's what I got for you guys today. Please let me know if you have any other questions. Please let me know if you need any other guidance. So you're wondering, why doesn't everybody do this? I don't know. I wish everybody did, right? I wish everybody did. But that is why I love Dutch tests so much. This is why we do Dutch testing and why we retest often to make sure that we are seeing the numbers change, because there are so many women out there too. Because in case you're wondering, well, what happens down the road, or do you ever retest? Absolutely, we do. There are so many women that will say, gosh, I'm feeling better, but I almost don't trust it, because you felt like garbage for so long and you don't trust and you've lost so much of that brain body connection that it's like, oh my gosh, okay, seeing the numbers here side by side, seeing my adrenals improve in function, seeing these numbers improve, seeing that I'm not deficient in B12 anymore. Okay, that does match with how I've been feeling. That's how you can start to restore as well your mind-body connection. Get reconnected with your physical body, because for so many women that have been told it's in your head, You're making it up. It can't be that bad. Blah, blah, blah. Suck it up, cupcake, or you're just stressed, or it's just your anxiety, or whatever. You start to lose that connection with your physical body. And this is a way that we go about working with you, telling you exactly how to go about it, and then restoring some of that for you, giving you that confidence back again. So learn more about a Dutch test if you're like, holy bananas, I need one of these right now. Go in the links. You can click the link. There's different types of Dutch tests, which I didn't really cover today. For some people who have insomnia, there's a type of test that we send out. If you, are worried about fertility, there's a cycle mapping test that we'll talk about. There's different types of tests. So we actually ask some questions to make sure we're getting you the right test to match with what you would need right off the bat. So let me know if you guys have any other questions. Let me know if you need any other guidance or help. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you found this message helpful, please do share it with other people that could use this message as well. So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you later. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If you would like more information, just head on over to drbethwesty.com for all the show notes and information from today's episode. And if you're looking for more community, more support, you can find and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and I would love to see you there.